All right, Shabbos, say good morning. Let us begin. A beautiful, beautiful daf ahead of us today. Begin by thanking our sponsors, our TALMUD TORAH sponsors for the month of Kislev. Sammy and Malka Esterson for dedicating the shiurim and droshos this month in memory of their parents and commemoration of their yahrzeits. Yitzchak Laib ben Aharon HaKohen, Sarah Rachel bas Baruch Avraham, and Hinda bas Henech Efraim. We hope that in the merit of our TALMUD TORAH, the neshamas will have an aliyah and the family a nechama. We thank our Week of Learning sponsors, Paul and Kathy Pollack, for dedicating the shiurim this week in memory of Paul's sister, Zachrini Shulamis bas Shmuel. We hope that in the merit of our TALMUD TORAH, the neshama will have an aliyah and the family a nechama. And above with that, let us begin. So we have a lot to do today, a very full daf, beautiful daf ahead of us. Today's daf is Lamed Aleph 31. And we are picking up on Lamed Aleph B's 30b. We left off 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14 lines up from the bottom. Supposed to just reorient ourselves a bit. If you remember again, the topic we were discussing was as follows. The Mishnah explained that they used to accept eidos, they used to accept testimony for Kiddush HaChodesh the entire day. Now, the truth is, which is fine, obviously, which worked for a while until it didn't. What occurred? So one time it happened that the Levium offered up the Tamid Shal Bein HaArbaim, the afternoon Tamid, and they went ahead and said the weekday Shira. They went ahead and they said the weekday Shira. And then afterwards, the Eidim came, and we'll say, we'll do the Mishnayos afterwards, if that's all right. The way we'll keep it a little bit easier. So the Eidim came, and they went ahead and declared the new month, and the VM realized that they had gone ahead and said the wrong Shira. They had said a weekday Shira, when in fact it was already Yom Tiv. So the Mishnah says, so what happened? Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai instituted that they would only, I should say differently. They instituted that they would only go ahead and accept eidos up until mincha time. After the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai said that halacha l'maisa you could accept eidos the entire day, because remember, since there's no karban, there's absolutely no issue. So we're trying to figure out in the Gemara. We tried to figure out in the Gemara to understand what does that mean. Does that mean that the witnesses went ahead and, that the Levium did not sing Shira at all, or they sang the wrong Shira? Which one was it? So the Gemara was trying to prove that it must be that they sang the wrong Shira. So the Gemara says, Maser Rav Acha bar Huna, Tamid Shal Rosh Hashana Shachris Kard Kilchaso. So Rav Acha bar Huna raises a kash. He says the Tamid Shal Rosh Hashana, the morning Tamid of Shachris. So remember again, there are two Tamidin. The one in the morning, one in the afternoon. So the Tamid of Rosh Hashanah in the morning, Karav Kilchaso, they went ahead and they offered up in the normal fashion. The Musaf Mahu Omer. Musaf, what did they say? Now we'll say, if you look at Rashi says, Karav Kilchaso, Omrim Halavim al Nesachav Shir Shel Chol K'mishpat Hayom Kimoshan Usharim Meseches Tammuz. Well, so as we're going to see now, there was a specific shira which was said for each and every day, right? Specific Levitic song said for each and every day. So the Rav Acha bar Rav Huna says as follows. So for the Tamid of Shachar Rosh Hashanah, so Kar Kilchas was offered up in the normative way with the regular shira. Now what that means is, remember, on the 30th day of Elul, by the time they offered up the Tamid Shal Shachar, it was rare that the Eidim would have already been there to declare the new month. So more often than not, what ended up happening was, for the morning Shira, they said the regular weekday Shira. But Musaf Mahu Omer, for Musaf, what would they say? Harninu lelokim uzenu hariu lelokei Yaakov. So it says, we're going to see quite beautifully. So the Shira of the Levium, the Shira that the Levium said in the Beis Hamikdash, was Tehillim. So I will say just a word about this. Remember, David HaMelech wanted more than anything to build the Beis Hamikdash. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu did not allow him to build the Beis Hamikdash. His inability to build the Beis Hamikdash, however, did not stop him from producing something beautiful. He wrote Sefer Tehillim. And the point of Sefer Tehillim was to provide the Levium with the Shira to recite inside of the Beis Hamikdash. So David HaMelech couldn't build it, but he bought the property for it, right? He bought the threshing floor of Aravna HaYivusi, which becomes the Beis Hamikdash, and he wrote the music for the Leviim. An incredible Musar Haskell, that in life, just because you can't do what you want does not mean that you are exempted from accomplishing great things. David HaMelech couldn't do what he wanted, but he was able to maximize his potential in the way that HaKadosh Baruch Hu allowed him to do so. An incredible Musar Haskell. So therefore, again, when you see, we're going to go through now the list, that the Shira of the Leviim was different kapitlach of Tehillim. So for example, again, for Musaf on Rosh Hashanah, for the Karban Musaf, they would say Kapitel Pei Aleph, chapter 81 in Tehillim. Again, there's different symbolisms for each of these kapitlach, for each of these chapters. We're not going to get into everything. For example, Rashi brings down Harninu lelokim uzenu hariu lelokei Yaakov. Hariu lashon trua, blowing of the shofar. That's what would be the Musaf on Rosh Hashanah. But Mincha Ma Omer, what would they say by Mincha? Kol Hashem Yachil Midbar. Again, which is Kapitel 29. Why would they go ahead and mention this? Because once again, this also mentions the Kol Shofar by Matan Torah, right? Kol Hashem Yachel Midbar. The Midbar we hear reference to Sinaitic revelation. Remember, when we blow the shofar, part of the Shofros section in Rosh Hashanah, which we'll get into, references the shofar of Har Sinai as well. Ubizman Shachal Rosh Hashanah Lios Bechamishi B'Shabbos, when Rosh Hashanah fell out on a Thursday, Shashira Shalo Harninu Lelukim Uzeinu. So here's what's interesting. The regular Shira, the regular Levitic song of just a regular Thursday, was Harninu Lelukim Uzenu Hario Lelukei Yaakov, Kapitel Pei Aleph, chapter 81 in Tehillim. So what's interesting about this is as follows, that technically speaking, you could be saying that on a regular Thursday morning, plus if the Eidim then came, you might be saying that again by Musaf. So Lo Hayo Omer B'Shachris, Harninu Mipnei Shechozer V'Kofel HaSaparik. So interestingly enough, if the 30th of Elul fell on a Thursday, and therefore it was possible that it was going to become Rosh Hashanah, they would not say the normal Shira of a regular Thursday morning, because if the Eidim came, they'd end up saying the same Shira both by the morning as well as by Musaf. Elamau Omer, so what would you say in that case when it's a Thursday morning? Hasirosi misevel shichmo. I have removed the burden from his shoulders. Kapitel Pei Aleph, chapter 81 again. So remember, this, Rashi points out, is a reference to the emancipation of Yosef from prison, which we learned earlier occurred on Rosh Hashanah as well. And if the Eidim came immediately after the morning Tamid, Omer Harninu, then you would repeat Harnenu even though you said it in the morning. So the Gemara will say, so all of this is a long way of saying so I'll say, so the Gemara just said that if it's a Thursday and the Eidim come right after Talmud Shel Shachar, you would repeat the same kapitel. So it makes sense to say that in cases of ambiguity, we recite the Shir Shel Yom, as opposed to omit the Shir Shel Yom. Let's remember again, the fundamental machlokes we're trying to figure out over here is as follows. The Mishnah told us that the whole reason we stopped accepting Eidos from Mincha time and on was Mipnei Shekilkalu HaLeviyim B'Shir. The Leviyim made a mistake. So the shaila is, what does it mean they made a mistake? They didn't say Shira at all, or they said the wrong Shira. The Gemara says, based on what we're saying over here, it sounds like you're always going to say Shira. You're always going to say Shira. So Kilkulu must mean that what? They said the wrong Shira. So the Gemara says, Shtap of Lamed Aleph, Shiny Hasam, the Shira Diomehu. No, you can't necessarily bring a raya from the Thursday case, because I will say, since already the Thursday case, as we mentioned before, the regular Shir Shal Yom is the Harninu Lelokim Hariu. Or Harninu Lelokim Uzenu. Hariu Lelokim Yaakov. Since that's the regular Shira for a general Thursday morning, it could be that in a case of doubt, or in a case of where the witnesses came right after Talmud Shel Shachar, they would end up repeating the same Shira. But that doesn't necessarily give you a proof to what would happen on a different day. Okay, Tanya, Rabbi Yehuda, Mishra, Rabbi Akiva. So we'll say now that we mentioned this about what the Leviim went ahead would say each day, we're going to expound on this a little bit and talk a bit more in depth in terms of the beautiful Shira that the Leviim said in the Beis HaMikdash each day. So Tanya, Rabbi Yehuda, Omer, Mishra, Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Yehuda said the name of Rabbi Akiva as follows. Barishon Mahayu Omer. We'll say, what would they say on Sundays in the Beis HaMikdash, right? What was the Shir Shel Yom on a Sunday? Lashem ha'aretz u'mala'ah. So I'll say the shira on a Sunday was to Hashem, literally the Hashem, to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, haaretz, the earth, umala'ah, and its entirety. Why is that the shir shal yom on Sunday? Hashem shekana v'hikna v'shalit ba'olama. Because we'll say what happened on Sunday is we're going to see, by the way, very beautifully, the shir shal yom of the Levium corresponds to creation. So on Sunday, first day of creation, we say La Hashem to Hashem is the land in its entirety. Why? Because what happened on Sunday? Al Shem Shekana v'Hikna v'Shalit. HaKadosh Baruch Hu literally acquired the world. Hikna, or I should say Shekana, Rashi says, is Shamayim v'Aretz. He acquired the heaven and the earth. Hikna, which literally means he conveyed ownership to the future inhabitants. He created a world for us. V'Shalit ba'olam. And he demonstrated his mastery over the world. Because remember, again, on day one, HaKadosh Baruch Hu was the only being in the world. Even the Malachim were not yet in the world. Beautiful. So, Basheni Mahayu Omrim, what would they say on the second day? So we'll say this is literally a window into the Beis HaMikdash, into the Shira which was sung in the Beis HaMikdash. Basheni Mahayu Omrim, on the second day, what would they say? Monday. So Gadol Hashem Muhula Ma'od. So they would say the capital Pei Beis. Mizmor Liasaf Elokim. I'm sorry. Gadol Hashem Muhula Ma'od Be'ir Elokeinu Har Kodsho. So what does it mean when it says Gadol Hashem, God is great, Umihula Ma'od, and is very praised? Hashem Shechilek Ma'asav. Because what happened on Monday? What happened on Monday is he went ahead and literally Chilek Es Ma'asav. He divided his creations. Rashi says over here, because what occurred or what began on Monday? Hivdil rakia bin elyonim litachtonim v'nis ala v'yashav b'marom. So we'll say, so what happened on Monday? Baruch Hu created the rakia, created the sky. What was the point of the sky? To divide between the upper waters and the lower waters. Hashem shechilak ma'asav umalach aleihen. And he declared again his dominion. I will say, now once there was a rakia, and there was an upper area and the lower area, HaKadosh Baruch Hu asserted his rulership over both of those domains. B'shlishi hayu omrim, what would they say on, or I should say, B'shlishi hayu omrim, on Tuesday, they would say, Elokim nitzav ba'ados kel. Quoting over here from Kapitel Pei Beis, Mizmor the Asaf, Elokim nitzav ba'ados kel. What does this mean? Ashim shegila Aretz b'chachmaso. He revealed the earth in his wisdom. Because let's remember again on Tuesday what happened. Well, a couple of things happened on Tuesday, right? But one of them is that the waters were pulled back from the land. So remember again, the world was totally covered with water. And then HaKadosh Baruch Hu caused the waters to recede and to reveal dried land. So Hashim Shegila Aretz b'chachmaso v'heichen tevel la'avodaso. La'adaso. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu pulled back the water. He revealed the earth in his wisdom, and he prepared the earth for his assembly, meaning us. On Wednesday, they would say the following shira: Kel nekamos Hashem. The Ribono Shel Olam is a God of vengeance. Now, why would they say this here? Hashem Shebara Chama Ulavana, because remember again on day 4, on Wednesday, HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the sun and the moon. Va'asid lipara me'ovdehen. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu is ultimately going to exact judgment from those who worship the luminaries. That's why it calls God a God of vengeance. Bechamishi hayu omrim. On Thursday they would say in the Beis HaMikdash. Once again, remember, just going through the list of the Shiras HaLeviim. This is what the Leviim would sing each and every day. Bechamishi hayu omrim. Harninu lelokim uzenu. So what does this mean over here? Quoting from Kapitel Pei Aleph, which we just mentioned before, Abos, right? This was the Gemara we just had before. Harninu le'elokim uzenu. So literally, go ahead, sing out to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, our source of strength. Al Shem Shebara Ofos V'Dagim L'Shabeach L'Shmo. Because what happened on Thursday? Hashem created the birds and the fish, l'shabeach l'shmo, literally again to give praise to his name. What does that mean? Well, say take a look at Rashi. Rashi is right across. Shabara ofos v'dagim l'shabeach l'shmo, kisha adam roa ofos mishunim zemizeh, nosein shevach l'misha bara'am. This is so beautiful. When a person sees birds that are so different one from the other, a person gives thanks to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That sometimes the way you see, the Rambam talks about this in the Deos, that sometimes the way you really see the incredible power of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is by observing the natural world. And specifically when you see the birds and how many different types of birds there are, that ultimately leads one to give praise to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Bashishi hayu omrim, on Friday, what did the Levium say? Hashem malach geus lavesh. Literally again, Hashem is the ruler, geus lavesh. He wears grandeur. Now what does this mean? So the Gemara says, Al Shem shegamar malachto umalach alehin. Since on Friday, HaKadosh Baruch Hu created his work of creation and asserted his rulership over everything. Bashvi hayu omrim, what would they say on Shabbos? Mizmor shir liyom hashabbos. Ultimately, again, they would say the capital Mizmor shir liyom hashabbos. Capital Tzadik Beis 92. Why? Liyom Shekulo Shabbos. I will say now, interestingly enough, Mizmor Shir Liyom HaShabbos doesn't talk about Shabbos. It doesn't talk about Shabbos. What is it a reference to? The Gemara says it's a reference to the Messianic era. If you look at Rashi, Liyom Shekulo Shabbos, we're literally right across in Rashi. Sha'asir ha'olam liyos charev ve'in adam v'chala malacho shov sos al osa yom om shir shel Shabbos. Shabbos say actually Mizmor Shel Yom HaShabbos is a reference to the future time where the world will be in a state of desolation. There will be no people. There will be no constructive malacha done. And about that day, we say Mizmor Shel Yom HaShabbos. Now we'll discuss what that means in just a moment. But I will say, you'll notice something very interesting. That for the 6 days, from what we'll call Sunday through Friday, all the Shiras HaLeviim, right, the Shir, the song of the Leviim, corresponds back to that particular day of creation. Yet, interestingly enough, by Shabbos, the Shira of the Leviim corresponds to the Messianic era, nothing historical. We'll bring up that point in just a moment. Avraham Nechemiah, supposed to here we go. Nechemiah is bothered by this. He says, "Ma ra'u chachamim lechalik ben aprakim halalu." I don't understand why the Chachamim would go ahead and distinguish between these kapitlach. Look at Rashi. What does that mean? Shekol sheishes yamim ne'amar na'aprakim halalu al shem sha'avar v'shal Shabbos al shem la'aba. So Rabbi Nechemiah is bothered by it as follows, like we just mentioned. Why is it that for the first 6 days of the week, the Shira of the Levim corresponds to what occurred in creation, yet by Shabbos the Shira of the Levim corresponds to what? To what's going to happen in the future? That doesn't make any sense. To which the Gemara says, Ella barishon shekana vehikna v'shalit ba'olamo. So therefore, again, Rabbi Nechemiah says like this. So Rabbi Nechemiah now goes through his own list of the Shiras HaLeviim. Now the truth is, he doesn't really change anything we're going to see in the beginning. So watch this. Ella barishon shekana vehikna v'shalit ba'olamo. B'sheni, so we'll say he's just restating everything. B'sheni shechilik maso malach alehen. B'shlishi shegila aretz b'chach maso ve'vet tevan la'adaso. B'revi'i shebara chama v'levana v'asli parmi of dayan. B'chamishi shebara opos v'dagim l'shabeach l'shmo. B'shishi shegamar malachto u'malach alehen. So we'll say so far, Rabbi Nechemiah is saying the same thing as Rabbi Akiva. Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, all the same shira. Here we go. B'shvi'i al shem sheshavas. Ultimately, again, but on Shvi'i, on Shabbos, here's what's interesting. Rabbi Nechemiah also doesn't disagree with it's actually Rabbi Akiva, right? He doesn't disagree with Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva says, what was the Shira of the Levium on Shabbos? It was Mizmor Shel Yom HaShabbos. So Rabbi Nechemiah doesnesn't disagree with that. What does he disagree about? Whereas Rabbi Akiva sees Mizmor Shel Yom HaShabbos as a reference to what? The Messianic era. Rabbi Nechemiah sees it as a reference to the original Shabbos of creation. That's all. The kamiflagi b'drav katina. Shabbos said, the Gemara says, what is at the root of their machlokes? So the Gemara says that the root of their machlokes is the statement of Rav Katina. What did Rav Katina say? Damar Rav Katina, because Rav Katina says, Shisa alfi shani havi alma, the world will exist for 6,000 years. V'chad charuf, and for 1,000 years, the world will be in a state of desolation. Shnei Amar, v'niskav Hashem levado bayomahu. As the pasuk says, that literally HaKadosh Baruch Hu will exist by himself or he will be exalted by himself on that day. The pasuk from Yeshayahu. So Amar Abai says, Trei charuf. No, not 1,000 years of desolation, but rather what? 2,000 years of desolation. Shne'emar yichayenu miyomayim. So what's going on over here? Take a look at Rashi. The kamiflegi b'drav katina. It's almost right across in Rashi, a little bit above. Rabbi Nechemya lesle drav katina ela da'abaye hilchach leka lameimar shem yom echad shekul Shabbos da treininu. So we'll say, here's what's fascinating. You see, what's happening over here is as follows. There is this, whatever this exactly means, because it's hard to understand, because some of these things are a reference to the Messianic era, pre-Messianic era, but apparently the world exists for a certain amount of time, then there's some period of desolation, and then there is Mashiach. So the shaila is, what is that period of desolation? Is it 1,000 years? Is it 2,000 years? So interestingly enough, Rabbi Akiva holds, like Rav Katina, that it's 1,000 years. And therefore he understands Mizmor Shir Liyom HaShabbos. The Yom actually refers to the 1,000 years of desolation. That there'll be 1,000 years of Shabbos, so to speak, 1,000 years of desolation. Rabbi Nechemya, on the other hand, holds that it's 2,000 years. Because it's 2,000 years, Yomayim, right? Yomayim, 2,000 years. Therefore, Mizmor Shir Yom HaShabbos, which only refers to one day being 1,000, because remember, we're going to say all the parallelism is 6 days of creation, 6,000 years that the world exists. Mizmor Shir Yom HaShabbos, Rabbi Akiva says there's that Yom, that 1,000 years of desolation. Rabbi Nechemya, on the other hand, holds that it's 2,000 years of desolation. So therefore, it can't be referenced to in Mizmor Shir Yom HaShabbos. So therefore, he understands Mizmor Shir Yom HaShabbos as a reference to the original Shabbos of Bereshis. Okay, that's the machlokes. Rabbi says, I just want to point out, there's no machlokes as to what the Leviim said. Just want to point that out. The only machlokes that exists between Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Nechemya is the symbolism of the Shira on Shabbos. Rabbi Nechemya is saying that the symbolism reflects back to the Shabbos of Bereshis. Rabbi Akiva that reflects forward to the 1,000 years of desolation in the pre-Messianic era. Incredible. So the Gemara says, "But must say the Shabbos Samayu Omrim." So they will say all of that is the Shira that they would sing on each day. What about Musaf on Shabbos? Right? What Shira, what song would the Leviim sing by the Musaf on Shabbos? Mayu Omrim, Amrav Anan Barava Amrav Haziv Loch. So we'll say this is very interesting. The Shira they would sing is what's called Haziv Loch. Now what's Haziv Loch? So we'll say this is actually Parshas Ha'azinu. So take a look at Rashi. Haziv Loch, Parshas Ha'azinu, Cholkim also, L'shisha Prakim. In Ha'azinu we would divide it up into 6 parts. Harishon Ha'azinu, Hashir Zechar Yemos Olam, Hashlishi. Let me say that, I'm sorry. Harishon Ha'azinu, Hasheni Zechar Yemos Olam, Hashlishi Yarkiveh V'Avos Ha'aretz, Harivi Vayar Hashem Vayinatz, Ad kan shisha psukim leperek. Umikan ve'elach shmona psukim leperek hachamishi luikas. We'll say, so Haziv Lach represents how they would, it's a mnemonic, it's how they would divide up the parsha of Ha'azinu. Right? Ha'azinu is the final shira that Moshe Rabbeinu sings, that Moshe Rabbeinu conveys in the Torah. So this apparently was the shira for the Leviim, for Musaf on Shabbos. Quite beautiful. From Rav Chanan Barava Amarav, Keder Shecholkin Kan, Kach Cholkin Bebeis HaKnesses. The way they would divide up Parshas Ha'azinu for the Shira in the Beis HaMikdash was the same way we divide up Parshas Ha'azinu when we read the Parsha in the Torah. B'mincha, the Shabbos, Mahayu Omrim. What would they say by the carbon mincha of Shabbos? So let's remember again, there's Shira with every carbon. So now we've established, we know Shabbos morning, they would say Mizmor Shel Yom HaShabbos. Shabbos Musaf, they'd say Haziv Lach, Parshas Ha'azinu. What about Shabbos Mincha? Well, what Shira would they say by Shabbos Mincha? So the Gemara says, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Az Yashir, Umicha Mocha, Va'az Yashir. So this is actually quite beautiful. So they would say Az Yashir. So the first Az Yashir is a reference to what we call Shiras Hayam, the Az Yashir that we said when we crossed the Yam Suf. Micha Mocha is Micha Mocha by Lim Hashem. Micha Mocha Nedar Bakodesh in Shmos, right? Also part of the Shira. And then Va'az Yashir. The third Az Yashir is what we call the Shiras HaBe'er, right? The Shira of the Be'er of Miriam. Az Yashir, Yisrael as Hashir Azos, Alei Be'er anu lo. Shiras habe'er, right? The shir that spoke about the well that we had in the desert. So both say, so that's the shira now of mincha on Shabbos. Pretty incredible. So hani kulu, so ibailu, the Gemara Sakasha, ibailu, hani kulu, bechad Shabbos amrilu, ol dilma kol Shabbos v'Shabbos. So both say, if you think about this, by the way, this is a lot of shira for one Shabbos, right? So the morning shir and say, Mizmor Shel Yom HaShabbos, fine. But if you think about this, by Shabbos Musaf, you've got what? All of Hazinu, which again it's not a long parasha, but it's Hazinu, or a good part of Hazinu. Hazinu by Shabbos Min, that's Musaf. By Shabbos Mincha, you've got Az Yashir, Micha Mocha, and Az Yashir the Shiras Habe'er. So the Gemara says, did they say all of this every single Shabbos? Hani Kulhu, right? The Shira of Musaf. We're not talking about Shacharis now. Shacharis, you understand? They said Mizmor Shel Yom HaShabbos. But Musaf and Mincha, did they say this entire thing every single Shabbos? Hani kulu b'chad shabsa amrilahu ol dilma kol shabsa v'shabsa amrichad. Or perhaps they only said one of these things each and every Shabbos. To which the Gemara says, look at Rashi for just a moment. Rashi says, both Rashi is on both sides of the Gemara on this page. So I'm on the bottom of the right hand side of Rashi. Bechad Shabbos Amrilahu Halavim Bayucholkim Aprakim B'Neimos Hakol LaHafsik Ubemachlefos Klei Shir B'Tkes Chatzos. Ros O Dilma, left hand side of Rashi. Kol Perak Uperak LaShabbos Achas Perak Echad. We'll say maybe there was like a Shira rotation. And remember, they would say one section of each of these parts each week. So that's the Shaila. Did they say everything every week? Or perhaps, again, one section of each of these parts each week. So Tashma, Disanyo, Amrab Yosi, Ad Shaharishona Omeres Achos, Shnia Choseres Shtayim. Rabbi Yosi said, by the time ultimately, again, the Musaf rotation would complete its first unit, but in other words, by the time they finished the rotation of the Shira of Musaf, they would have already gone through the Shira of Mincha 2 times, which indicates to us what? Shmamina kol shabsa v'shabsa amrichad shmamina. So therefore, it turns out, interestingly enough, that what we said before is as follows. When we said that by Musaf, they said as zivlach, they actually didn't say all of these sections of Ha'azinu all the time. They said one section per week. And when we came to Mincha, and we said by Mincha that they're saying Az Yashir, Micha Mocha, Az Yashir, they wouldn't say this, they wouldn't say the whole thing every week, but rather what? They'd say one section every week. And that's why the Gemara says that by the time they would go ahead and finish, we'll call it the rotation of the pieces of Musaf, of the Shir of Musaf, they'd have gone through Mincha twice. Good. Amrav Yehuda Bar They both say beautiful, beautiful Gemara. So we'll say it's very special because again, you could see first of all, it's always incredible to see how much thought goes into things, right? Remember again, in the Beis Hamikdash in general, everything is so highly scripted and so highly choreographed. You know, this is very important because, you know, often, especially today, we like to try to find spontaneity in Ruchnius, which is a beautiful thing, right? To be able for each of us to go ahead and find like our own level of spontaneity in our avodas Hashem. So understand, in the Beis Hamikdash, there's no spontaneity. There's no spontaneity. Because the closer you are to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the more careful those interactions have to be scripted. So that's why in the Beis HaMikdash, unfortunately, whenever we find examples of spontaneity, they never end well. Right? Nadav and Avihu decided to be spontaneous, didn't end well. The closer you are to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the more scripted and choreographed your avoda has to be. So it's incredible to see just the shir of the Levium, how much thought went into each and every day of Shira, which again always goes to a general theme which we've discussed so many times, which is that if a person wants to be successful in life, successful in their avodas Hashem, successful in life in general, a person has to lead a scripted, well-planned, well-thought-out life. When we live by the seat of our pants and we don't give thought to the direction I'm going in, to how I'm spending my time, to what I'm focusing my energies on, generally I don't accomplish everything that I can. I'll accomplish something, but there's such bizbuz hasman, there's such a waste of time. You see that in the mikdash, which is supposed to represent the paradigm of spiritual success, everything is scripted. Everything is planned, right? You both say, is there such thing as the Kohanim running late in their avoda? Is there such? My alarm didn't go off. You know what? I'm so sorry. Right? I didn't. There's no such thing as that. There's just no such thing. There's no such thing as I just wasn't able to show up. There's no. In other words, that there's a recognition that there's obligations. I have an obligation to honor those obligations. And there's nothing that keeps me from it. The truth is, of course, are there extenuating circumstances? Sure. Remember, again, we saw back in Yuma, they would keep the Kohen Gadol up the entire night in order that he shouldn't have a seminal emission, right? He shouldn't have Biroa carry. So you see, do things happen? Of course, that's the nature of life. But Lamaisa, as a mahalach, sometimes the way we approach certain things is, I'm going to try my best. I'm going to try my best with this. That's not the way you really succeed in life. The way you succeed in life is I think the way you succeed in life is to say, this has to get done. This has to get done. There's no I'm going to try. So I'm going to try. I'm going to do my best. I think today, this has to get done. And if it has to get done, and it's Yeharig Val Yavar, there are no excuses, that's how it gets done. That was the Beis HaMikdash. There are no excuses. Now, again, the good thing in the Beis HaMikdash is you had a good number of Kohanim. You had a good number of Leviim. So even if one person, right, had an alarm fail or whatever else, at the end of this, there is someone else to pick up the slack. But as a paradigm in life, what are the things in my life that have to get done? What are the things in my life for which excuses are not acceptable? What are the things in my life where I have to deliver? And create that seder around those things. That's the key to spiritual and life success. Says the Gemara. I'm going to say beautiful Gemara. I'm going to be Yochanan. Esther Masos Nosa Shchina Mikrai Uknegdan Golsa Sanhedrin Mi Gemara. This is a very moving Gemara. So Yochanan says the Shchina had a 10-stage journey. When the Shchina left the Beis Hamikdash, in other words, as a result of Klal Yisrael's negative behaviors, the Shechina didn't just depart from the earth to the celestial sphere in one move, but rather again, the Shechina underwent a 10-stage journey. A 10-stage journey of removal. That journey we know because it's documented in Pesukim, and correspondingly, the Sanhedrin, when it moved out of the Beis Hamikdash, also left in 10 stages. That's learned out from Gemara, from our tradition. So listen to this. So Shechina Mikrai, so listen to this. So where did the Shechina move? Mikaporis Lekruv. So this is actually fascinating. The first place the Shechina resided was on top of the lid of the Aharon. So the first stage was it left the lid, and it perched itself on one of the kruvim, one of the cherub-like figures on top of the lid. Mikruv lekruv. Then it went from one kruv to another kruv. Umikruv lemiftan. Then it went from the kruv to the threshold of the ulam, the threshold of the antechamber. Mimiftan lechatzer. It went from the miftan, from the threshold into the chatzer. Then I will say, what I want to point out over here, the chatzer, remember again, the chatzer that the Gemara is referring to over here is the courtyard right outside of the ulam, right outside of the antechamber of the Mishkan. Not what we call the Ezras Nashim, which was the primary courtyard when you walked into the Beis HaMikdash. This is the courtyard. Remember again, you'd walk up the steps, go through Shar Nikanor, walk down another set of steps, and there was a courtyard there. The Mizbeach was in there. Shechina departed to that courtyard. So the Gemara is Umi Chatzer, the Mizbeach. Then it departed from the Chatzer and ultimately resided on the Mizbeach. Umi Mizbeach legag. It then went from the Mizbeach to the rooftop of the Mikdash. Umi gag lechoma. From the rooftop of the Mikdash to the wall of the Mikdash. Michoma le'ir. From the wall of the Mikdash, wall of the Harabayis, to Yerushalayim. Umeir lahar. From Yerushalayim to the mountain. Rashi points out over here is that the har, Rashi says, is Harazesim, which is pretty incredible. That one of the steps, right, one of the places that the Shechina resided in was on Harazesim, Mount of Olives. Mihar lemidbar. It then went from Harazesim to the midbar, to the desert. Midbar also v'yashavim koma. Desert was the last step. And then the Shechina ascended from the desert to the celestial Srinabosai. Now, what's happening over here? So we'll say, if you take a look If you take a look at Rashi on the left-hand side, Nasa Shechina, it's in the short lines, about 5 lines in. You see that Rashi, Nasa Shechina, Listalik me'al Yisrael, ma'at kishechatu. I will say, what's happening over here? You see, the Ribono Shel Olam loves us so much that even in situations where our behavior is so negative that the Shechina cannot reside in our midst, the Shechina doesn't just pull out immediately. But instead, what happens? The Shechina removes itself in stages, giving us the opportunity to repent, giving us the opportunity to do tshuva, giving us the opportunity to say, like almost like a wait and see. Okay, so I can't reside on the lid of the Aron. I'll go to a kruv. I'll go from a kruv to a kruv. I'll go to the threshold. I'll go to the chatzar. I'll go to the mizbeach. I'll go to the roof. I'll go to the wall. I'll go to Yerushalayim. I'll go to Haram Mishcha. I'll go to the desert. Waiting for us to do tshuva. That's how much HaKadosh Baruch Hu loves us. He waits and he waits and he waits. At a certain point in time, he can't wait. Now, I want to be clear. HaKadosh Baruch Hu never stops waiting. Just at a certain point in time, he stops waiting here on the earth and waits for us from above. But the door never closes, of course, right? The door for tshuva never ever closes, even once the Shechina recedes from the world. But that's the incredible message over here. HaKadosh Baruch Hu giving us opportunity after opportunity after opportunity to get things right. So beautiful. Suppose now the Gemara quotes the Psukim that support this idea. So the Gemara says, Shneimar elef hashuva am komi. So now the Gemara is going to give the psukim that go ahead and support each stage of this journey. Mikaporos lekruv, mikruv lekruv, mikruv lemiftan. So how do I know that it goes from the kaporos and the lid to the kruv, from one kruv to another kruv, from the kruv to the threshold? Dechsiv v'na'arati lechasham v'dibarti tchami ala kapores. First the pasuk says, Chash Baruch says to Moshe, I will speak with you from on top of the lid of the ark, which indicates to us that the original resting place of the Shechina is on top of the lid of the Aron. Uksiv vayirkav al kruv vayaf. Uksiv ukvoda lekeisrael na'ala me'ala kruv asher haya alav al miftan habayis. So both you see over here, goes from the lid to the kruv, one kruv to another kruv, and then the kruv ultimately again to the threshold of the Beis HaMikdash. Miftan lechatzer, and ultimately again from the threshold to the chatzer, the chsiv vayimali habayis es ha'anan v'chatzer mala es noga kavod Hashem. So the pasuk says again, the Beis HaMikdash was filled with the anan, and then again the chatzer. So michatzer the mizbeach, from the chatzer to the mizbeach, the chsiv ra'isi es Hashem nitzav al hamizbeach. Pasuk says, I saw Hashem literally again on the altar. Mizbeach lagag, from the altar to the roof of the Beis HaMikdash. Tichsiv tov lasheves apinas gag apinas gag migag lechoma, from the roof to the wall. Tichsiv v'hine Hashem nitzav al chomas anoch michoma le'ir, from the wall to Yerushalayim. Tichsiv kol Hashem ne'ir yikra me'ir lahar, from Yerushalayim ultimately to Har HaMishcha, to Har HaZeisim. Tichsiv vayal kvod Hashem me'al toch ha'ir vayamot al hahar asher mikedem le'ir. Umihar lemidbar. How do you know that it goes from Har HaMishcha, from Har HaZeisim, Mount of Olives, to the desert? Tichsiv tov sheves baris midbar, or tov sheves baris midbar. Midbar also v'yashal makomo, and from the desert ultimately again it went and ascended to its place. Tichsiv elech eshuva al mekomi. I will go back and reside in my place. So we'll say, what an incredible moving Gemara. These are the 10 stages of the removal of the Shekhinah. We'll say, what you also begin to see something very interesting. If you notice, what ends up happening is, at first, the divine steps are much smaller. Right? Think about this. Where does the Shekhinah start? Where does it start? The lid of the Aron. And where does it go? Kruv. Very short distance. Next step, one kruv to the other kruv. Also short distance. Next step, to the threshold. Also short distance. Next step, right? Chotzer, you get the point. Short distance. Mizbeah, short distance. Roof, short distance. Choma, short distance. Right? And again, if you notice, by the way, the distances get progressively larger, right? Wall to Yerushalayim, Yerushalayim to Harazeisim, Harazeisim to the Midbar. So you see something absolutely amazing. It's not only that HaKadosh Baruch Hu waits for us to do tshuva. It's not only that He's longingly waiting there for us to turn things around, but you see that even the initial steps that He takes are very small steps away from us. It's only as time goes by and it's clear that we're, for whatever the reason, we're choosing not to turn things around, that those steps become a bit more pronounced. Really incredible, really incredible. Amr Rabbi Yochanan, Shisha Chadashim this Akt v'Shechina liyisab b'midbar. But get ready for this. How long did the Shechina spend in the desert? Because remember again, the desert is the last step before the Shechina ascends. So how much time did the Shechina spend in the desert? So the Gemara says Rabbi Yochanan said 6 months. The Shechina waited in the desert. Shemi yachzeru b'tshuva, kevan shelo chazru. But he waited 6 months in the desert for us to do tshuva. But ultimately, again, once 6 months went by and we did not do tshuva, kevan shelo chazru amar tipach atzman. So we'll say tipach literally means, you know what? Literally means let their bones decay. But what it means, it's okay. I tried. I will say, HaKadosh Baruch Hu can't force us to do anything. I mean, He can, but He doesn't force us to do anything. The only thing that Ribono Shel Olam does for us in this world is He creates opportunities. That's what HaKadosh Baruch Hu does. He is the creator of opportunities. It is up to us to seize the opportunities. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, I created the opportunity, I'm waiting. I'm just waiting. I'm not leaving. I have every right to leave now, but I'm not leaving. I'm just waiting. But if you don't want to take advantage of the opportunity to return, I can't wait around forever. It's not true. By the way, HaKadosh Baruch Hu does wait around forever, but He has to tell us He's not waiting around forever. But Lamaise, He does wait for us forever. So they give it Shnei Amar ve'eni rishon techalera umanos avar minham v'tikvasam mipach nefesh ukinegdon galsa Sanhedrin migimar. So let's listen to this. The Sanhedrin also had 10 stages of exile. 10 stages of exile. So how did this go? And both say that we don't have psukim, we have a tradition. So the Gemara says, Milishkas hagazes l'chazes. Now both say this is very interesting. Now remember, I pointed this out a couple of days ago. The Sanhedrin operated in the Beis HaMikdash, right? That was their seat. Remember this from our Yuma days, in the chamber of hewn stone, the Lishkas hagazes. The Sanhedrin left the Lishkas hagazes before the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed. So why did they leave? This is incredible. Look at Rashi. It's the last Rashi on the daf on the left-hand side. Milishkas hagazes lechaniyos. Rashi says, Chaniyos aslem harabayis v'yashisham lomar shelo danu dinei nefashas dechazu dinafishe rotzchim kidamrin b'Sanhedrin. So Rabbi say this is absolutely incredible. Before the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash, there was such a profound moral decay. This is by the first temple. Such profound decay, and there was a proliferation of murders. Right? So remember, there's only one court. So the Sanhedrin would be the one who would judge capital cases. There was such a proliferation of murders in the community that the Sanhedrin left the Lishkas Hagazis because they no longer wanted to go and adjudicate capital cases. And if they're not sitting in other words, there was such a breakdown. There was such a breakdown of the judicial system, such a breakdown of the penal code, such a breakdown of everything. They left the chamber of hewn stone. But they left before the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed because they could not go ahead and properly judge the perpetrators. Which I will say is such a fascinating idea. I have to think about this more. But I think what you begin to see is that there are times when leaders have to take a stand even in the midst of difficult times. And there are times when leadership almost has to absent itself because the constituency is so unwilling to listen to anything. You sounds like what's happening over here is the Sanhedrin made a conscious decision to absent themselves, at least from the realm of capital cases, which is really quite an amazing idea. So what happens? So they exile themselves milishkas hagazas lachanos to the storefronts. Now I'll say, what are the storefronts? So this is incredible. By the way, if you ever go to the southern wall excavations by the Kosel, so again, right by Robinson's Arch there, right? So remember, they've excavated storefronts. They've excavated storefronts over there in that area. So I mean, when people used to come to the Beis HaMikdash, there were stores that sold stuff. So the Sanhedrin relocated from the Lishkas Hagazis, they rented a storefront. I'm sure they got a good deal, right? But they rented the storefront by the Beis Hamikdash. That's where they adjudicated the case. Then they exiled themselves again from the storefronts by the Harabais to Yerushalayim. Yerushalayim liyavne. Then they went from Yerushalayim to Yavne. Amud Beis. Miyavne leusha. Meusha liyavne. Or meyavne leusha. So what's a lot of back and forth over Yerushalayim to Yavne. From Yavne to Usha. From Usha to Yavne. From Yavne to Usha. Meusha l'shafra'am, mishafra'am lebeis sha'arim, mebeis sha'arim mitzipori leTiveria, uTiveria amuka mikulon. And ultimately, again, I will say Tiveria was a low point for the Sanhedrin. Shnei Amar quotes over here the pasuk from Yishai v'shafalt me'eretz daberi u'me'afar tisham rasecha. So I will say but Rashi points out over here, interestingly enough, the Sanhedrin often moved based on whoever the Nasi was. Whoever was the Nasi, who was the head of the Sanhedrin would relocate to that person's locale. That was what happened. So wherever the Nasi lived, so a lot of times these relocations were not necessarily because they had to relocate. It was just simply because historically that is where the Nasi was living. So Rashi goes through over here all of these different, right? Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was when they were in Yavne, right? Usha was Rabbi Gamliel. Reb Shimon said Rabbi Gamliel, they went back to Yavne, Beis Sha'arim and Tzipori Tiveria. That was all the days of Rebbe. Okay, so the Gemara says very beautifully. The Gemara goes weiter. So the Gemara says, Rabbi Elazar Omer Sheish Galos. Rabbi Elazar says, no. The Sanhedrin was not exiled 10 times, but rather again it was exiled, or really it's self-exiled 6 times. Shnei Amar, because the Gemara quotes the pasuk. Rashi says over here, quotes the pasuk over here from Yeshayahu. Ki heishach yoshvei morum kirya niskava yashpilena yashpila ad aretz yageeno ad afar. So we'll say the way they dissect that pasuk is there are 6 expressions of lowliness, and they understand those 6 expressions to be a reference or to be a metaphor for the 6 exiles of the Sanhedrin. Rabbi Yochanan umisham asidin ligoel. So this is very beautiful because the pasuk says ultimately so yageeno ad afar, that the Sanhedrin ultimately again was reduced to the dust, and Rabbi Yochanan says from the dust, ultimately we will be redeemed. Shnei Amar hisna'ari me'afar kumi shivi. If you look at Rashi, Sheish Galos, Rashi says hashach chada yashpilena trei yashpila tlas ad aretz arba yagiena chamisha ad afar sheish. The Matzah says, so therefore you break up the pasuk, there are 6 expressions of lowliness. The last one being until the dust, ad afar. And Rabbi Yochanan says so beautifully, from the lowest point is exactly where we will be redeemed from. So ultimately again we end off in the dust and redemption takes place from the dust. Shnei Amar hisna'ari me afar kumi. Literally again hisna'ari, wake up or shake yourself off. Me'afar, right, hisnari, me'afar, shake yourself off or dust yourself off from the dust. Kumi shavi, stand up and take your rightful seat. Quite beautiful. Says the Mishnah, Amri Yeshua ben Karcha, va'odzos hiskan Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai made another takana. I will say the theme over here is, you see the takana of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. So what was the takana? Shafilu Rosh Beisin b'chamakom, shelo yu ha'edim holchen el ha'makom avad. So this is very interesting. The process, as we had it before for Kiddush HaChodesh, was that you need the Av Beis Din, right? You need the person in charge of the Beis Din. They hear the testimony. Remember, the Av Beis Din says Mekudash. Everyone else says Mekudash, and we're good to go. So Rabbi Yeshua ben Karcha says this. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai made another takana. Let's say when the Eidim come, the Av Beis Din is not there. He's in a different city. So you might have thought that we would make the Eidim go to the Av Beis Din. Kamash Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai says no. The witnesses do not have to chase after the Av Beis Din. If the Av Beis Din is not there, the Av Beis Din is not there, someone else will assume the responsibility of taking care of the declaration of the new month. We don't make the witnesses follow the Av Beis Din. So says the Gemara, let's analyze this. Hahu isisa de'azamnuha ledina kamei da'amemar. There was a particular woman who was summoned for a din Torah in front of Amemar ben Ardoi. In Ardoi, in the Babylonian city of Ardoi. Ozla Amemar leMechuzah, but Amemar had traveled to a different city of Mechuzah, v'lo Ozla Basrei. And this woman who was summoned for a din Torah didn't follow Ameimar to Mechuzah. So Psicha Ilava, they wrote up a document. Psicha, Rashi says, Shtar Shamta. They wrote a document of excommunication upon this woman for failure to appear in Beis Din. Right? If you get summoned to Beis Din and you don't appear, there could be what's called a Shamta. Shamta is a minor form of excommunication. So this woman was supposed to appear before Ameimar to his Beis Din. Ameimar's base was in Arda. She showed up in Arda. Ameimar traveled to Mechuzah, and she refused to travel to Mechuzah. Amir Rashi Ameimar v'ha nan tanan afilu rosh beis din b'chol makom shliyu ha'edim holchen ela makom bad. 1 second. The Mishnah said that one of the legislations of Rabbi Yochanan and Zakkai was what? That halacha l'maisa, you don't have to run after the Av Beis Din, right? Witnesses, when they saw the new moon, show up to Yerushalayim, to the Sanhedrin, to the Beis Din, and even if the Av Beis Din is somewhere else, we don't make the witnesses run after the Av Beis Din. So why are they excommunicating this woman? Amralei Hanimi Leve'inyan Eives HaChodesh. This legislation is fascinating. This legislation of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was in terms of Eidos HaChodesh, testimony about the new month. Why? The Im came Nimseis Machshin Las. Remember, we've seen this already. If you make giving testimony about the new month too complicated, what's going to happen? No one's coming. Because remember, we'll say this is an act of public service. It's very nice that if it's Shabbos, it's going to give you a nice suit or whatever else, right? This is an act of public service, and often again, it would require like a lot of tircha. If you make things too difficult for people, they're not going to do it. We'll say this is such an important klal in life in general. Same thing with where we mechanech our children. If we make doing the right thing too difficult, kids, adults, they're just not going to do it. So if you make Kiddush HaChodesh too difficult, you show up, the Ab Beis is not here. The Ab Beis is in Bnei Brak. You have to go to Bnei Brak? No, I just came here. People are going to say, forget it. So because of that, when it comes to Kiddush HaChodesh, you have to make things as simple as possible. But listen to this. But this does not apply in general cases of monetary law. Why? Because of Al-Hacha, Eved Love Le'ish Malveh. Shabbos say ultimately over here, Eved Love Le'ish Malveh means the borrower becomes a servant to the lender. Shabbos say, when it comes to financial disputes, if you're being called to Beis Din because of a debt, understand that when you get involved in a debt, you are a servant to the lender. Because you are a servant to the lender, therefore what? You have to go wherever the Beis Din requires you to go. You don't have much of a choice. You borrowed money, you signed up to be part of the legal process, you're meshubad, so which means is that if the Av Beis Din is somewhere else, you need to travel to the Av Beis Din. So what's an interesting distinction? Now it happens to be halacha l'maisa, in general, the concept of making, in other words, it's a fascinating discussion. Can you make, I have a legal dispute, I lent Reuven $1,000, now we're having a dispute about repayment. I want to go to a Beis Din in New York. Can I make Reuven appear in a Beis Din in New York? Is a fascinating discussion in halacha. It depends on the nature of your local Beis Din, right? If there is a local Beis Din, which is a Beis Din kavua, often the halacha says you cannot drag someone to another out-of-state Beis Din. But again, not getting into this now, the point over here that Ameimar was making was, right, Ameimar said, listen, when you go ahead and you borrow money, you agree to litigate these things in front of the Beis Din. They must have agreed to do so in the Beis Din of Ameimar, and therefore even if Ameimar is not present in Nardai, travel to Mechuzah, the borrower has to travel. This woman didn't travel, and therefore she was a document of excommunication was levied against her. Ten Rabbanon. Ein Kohanim Rashan Lalos B'Sandalim L'Duchen. Both listen to how beautiful this is. Kohanim can't go up to Duchen in sandals. Right? You can't wear shoes when you Duchen. V'zu echad mitesha takonos shetzei Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. And this is one of the 9 takonos that Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. And I will say, why can't Kohanim go ahead and Duchen? I will say this in general. Why do Kohanim take off their shoes when they Duchen? Right? Why do you have to take off your shoes? So the Gemara Masechah Sot explains very beautifully that the concern was that if the Kohen's shoelace unties, and what happens? He bends down during duchening to tie it, what's going to happen? People are going to think that, he's not really fit for duchening. In other words, he went up because he didn't want to be embarrassed, but during the actual bracha, he's pretending. He's bowing down and he's tying his shoe because maybe he's not fit. Why would he be unfit? Maybe his mother's a grusha. right? Or a chalutza, or maybe he's a pesuadaka, or maybe he's a this, or maybe he's a that. In other words, maybe there's a whole bunch of disqualifications. He's too embarrassed because everybody thinks he's a Kohen. See, he goes up there. He also likes the whole hand washing thing, right? See, he goes up there, right? See, he's pretending, but lamaisa, he doesn't want to say the bracha. So while everybody else is doing the duchening thing, he's bending down and tying his shoe. When in fact, Rabbi say he may just be bending down to do what? To do what? To tie a shoe. And as I say, this is an incredible Yisrael life in general. Sometimes you don't have to read things into every single thing that people do. Sometimes people just do stuff. Sometimes people just say stuff, and they actually don't mean anything deeper, right? We assume that everybody is like the deepest philosophical person. Their actions, their words are multidimensional, and there's what they're saying, and there's what they're meaning, and what they intend to. Sometimes it just is what it is. So sometimes the guy is just wearing his shoes, is just tying his shoes. But Lamaisa, we're concerned that people may infuse another narrative into that. And again, the moment you begin to cast aspersions on someone's kahuna is the moment that can have some significant familial ramifications as well. Therefore, no shoes. No shoes. And this is one of the 9 takanas Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai instituted. Rabbi say, now what are the 9? Shistahai pirka, v'chada de pirka kamai. Rabbi say, so ultimately again, remember, there's the 6 that so far we've seen in our parak. Rashi goes through them. We're not going to go through them now, right? There's the 6th of our parak. There's 1 in the previous parak. That was Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai said that Eidim could ultimately again could be Machal Shabbos for Nisan and for Tishrei, even in the absence of the Beis HaMikdash. Then, so that's 6 and 7. V'idach, and then again, now there's also the shoe tying, that's 8. V'idach, the Sanya, Gershin Iskayer Bizman Azad, so actually Yafrish Rova Lakino, Abbas is fascinating. The halacha is if someone converts contemporarily, the halacha is they have to separate out a quarter of a shekel for their carbon of gerus. Technically speaking, when a Jew converts, there's 3 things that happens. There's Mila, circumcision for a man. There's Tvila, immersion in a mikvah. And there's Karban. So the Gemara says over here, when you convert, so contemporarily we could do 2 out of the 3. Right? Circumcision and immersion. What about the Karban? Can't bring a Karban, but you have to set aside your money for Karban now. You have to set up Karban escrow. Right? Karban escrow right now so that money is ready for the Beis HaMikdash is rebuilt. So Rabbi Shimon Elazar said, Kvar nimna ale Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, Ubitla mipnei takala. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai came along and said, no, don't do that. Don't do that. Why? Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai says, we don't want you maintaining sacrificial funds. Because what's going to inevitably end up happening? You're going to end up using that money. So Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai says, listen, you know, when the Beis HaMikdash is rebuilt, you're going to have to bring a carbon for your conversion, for those who converted. But Lamaisa, do not separate out the money. Don't keep the money on hand, because we're afraid you're going to go ahead and misappropriate. So we'll say that's number 8. That was the other takana. Uvi'idach, what's the 9th takana of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai? Here we go. Uvi'idach, plukta de Rav Papa Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak. It's a machlokes what number 9 was. Rav Papa Amar Kerem Revai. Rav Papa says that the 9th takana was Kerem Revai. We'll see what in just a moment. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak Amar Lashon Shal Zahoris. No, it's the red wool of Yom Kippur. Here we go. Rav Papa Amar Kerem Revai. So let's remember again, what's Kerem Revai? For first 3 years, produce, you're not allowed to eat it. Right? Arla. Year number 4, you could eat it, but you have to eat it where? In Yerushalayim. Just like Meiser Sheni. You have to eat it in Yerushalayim. So watch this. This Sanya, this is beautiful. Kerem Revai Haya Ola Yerushalayim Mahalech Yom Echad L'chol Tzad V'Zoy Tchumas. So let's listen to this. The original takana was as follows. If you lived in close proximity to Yerushalayim, now both say, Kerem Revai, like Meiser Sheni. Let's say, Baruch Hashem, you have a lot of 4th year produce. You don't want to take it up to Yerushalayim. So what can you do? Redeem it with money. Take the money to Yerushalayim. Spend the money in Yerushalayim. But Chazal made a takana. What was the takana? If you live in close proximity to Yerushalayim, we don't want you redeeming your produce. What do we want you doing? Bringing the produce to Yerushalayim. Why? Because we want Yerushalayim to be filled with abundant produce. It looks nice. When the city is filled with abundant produce. So what's the tchum? What are the borders? So the Gemara says, Mahalek Yom Echad. If you live within a 1 day's journey of Yerushalayim, you have to bring the produce, the Kerem Revai, and you cannot just redeem it with money and bring the money. So V'zoi Tchuma, Elas Minat Safon, or really it's Minha, it's not Minat Safon, it's Minha Darom, sorry. Elas from the south, Akravas Min, at Safon from the north, Lud min Amarav, Yarden min Mizrach, Yarden to these. So we'll say these are the borders. So if you live within these areas, you cannot redeem your Kerem Revai, but instead you have to bring the produce itself. V'amar ula v'yitema Rabba bar ula, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, matam, what's the reason for this? Kedei la'after shukei Yerushalayim beperos. In order to adorn the marketplaces of Yerushalayim with produce. We want the marketplace to be overflowing with produce. V'tanya, Kerem Revai Hayilod Rabbi Eliezer b'Mizrach Lud b'tzad Kfar Tov. Listen to this, Rabbi Eliezer, who lived within the boundary. So you would have to bring up his Kerem Revai. He couldn't redeem it. One time, Baruch Hashem, he had an abundant amount of Kerem Revai. Ubikesh Rabbi Eliezer laf kiro la'aniyim. Rabbi Eliezer said, you know what? The truth is, it's Baruch Hashem. What a problem. Too much produce to bring up. I'm just going to make it hefker. And that way the poor could have it. Amrulo Talmid, the second one I was going to stop over. Amrulo Talmid, Rebbe, Kavar Nimnu Chaverecha Allah Vitirua. Rebbe, no. Your friends already suspended this legislation. Right? And said you no longer have to bring up your Kerem Revai. Man Chaverecha, who is your friend? Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. So I will say, so according to this approach of Rav Papa, the ninth enactment of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was not really an enactment, but rather, again, it was the repealing of the Kerem Revai legislation. Rabbosai, when did Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai repeal the Kerem Revai legislation? When? After the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed. Because after the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed and Yerushalayim was more in a state of desolation, there was no need to adorn the marketplaces. So because that Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai appealed the legislation saying you had to bring your Kerem Revai to Yerushalayim, and instead said, Rabbi Eliezer, that legislation is no longer in place, you have to bring your Kerem Revai. Let me take it back. Remember, you have to bring your Kerem Revai. What did he repeal? That if you're in 1 day journey, you have to what? Bring the produce. He said, no longer have to bring the produce. You could redeem the produce and bring the money to Yerushalayim. We'll continue with this tomorrow. Shkoyach. I'll say also for those who signed up for Mishnah Yomi, again, if you signed up and you'd like your Mishnah, they are here together with the calendars. If you have not yet signed up, it's not too late. I don't know if we have enough Mishnayos, but you could definitely sign up today. Mirza Hashem.